Nobody is coming to save you from the life you are currently living. Not your family, not your boss, not a lucky break, not some future version of motivation that magically shows up on a Tuesday morning. That sentence might sting a little. Good. Let it sting. Because underneath that sting is the most liberating truth you will hear all year. The truth that the responsibility for your life was never actually anyone else's job. It was always yours. And once you stop waiting for someone else to pick up that responsibility, everything changes. My name is Grant Michaels, and for the next few minutes, I want to walk with you through one of the hardest and most important lessons a person can learn. The lesson of building yourself when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, and when no one even knows you're trying. This is not a video about hustle culture or fake positivity. This is a video about something older and sturdier than that. It's about discipline. It's about self-reliance. It's about becoming the kind of person you can actually trust to show up for yourself, day after day, whether or not the world notices. Here's what nobody tells you when you're young. Comfort is patient. It doesn't demand anything from you. It just waits. It tells you there's always tomorrow. It tells you to wait until you feel ready, until the timing is better, until you have more energy, more money, more certainty. And most people listen to that voice their entire lives. They wait so long for the right moment that the right moment quietly turns into a wasted decade. If you've ever felt that slow, creeping guilt, the sense that you're capable of more than the life you're currently living, this video is for you. That feeling isn't random. It's your own potential, tapping on the glass, asking to be let out. Think about the people you admire most. Not the ones who got lucky, the ones who actually built something real. A business, a body, a skill, a reputation, a peaceful mind. I promise you, almost none of them got there through a single dramatic moment. They got there through hundreds of unremarkable Tuesdays. Early mornings nobody saw. Promises kept to themselves when it would have been so much easier to break them. That is the real machinery behind every success story you've ever admired, even if the highlight reel never shows it. And here is the part that most people don't want to hear. This process is often lonely. Not because people don't care about you, but because nobody can do the internal work for you. Your friends can cheer you on. Your family can support you. But they cannot sit down and do the reps for you. They cannot make the disciplined choice on your behalf at 11 at night when you're tired and the couch is calling your name. That choice belongs to you alone. And learning to be at peace with that, learning to walk that stretch of the road by yourself, is exactly what separates the people who talk about change from the people who actually become someone new. If any part of what I just said feels like it's speaking directly to you, if you've been sensing that you're standing at the edge of a version of yourself you haven't built yet, I want you to do something for me right now. Drop a comment and just say, I'm ready. I read every single one. And honestly, it means something to see who's actually willing to do this work. Because what I'm about to walk you through next isn't just motivation. It's a complete shift in how you'll think about effort, identity, and progress. And the section coming up right after this might be the one piece of this entire video you end up replaying more than once. Let's start with the problem underneath the problem. Most people don't struggle because they lack ambition. They struggle because somewhere along the way, they outsource their motivation to their feelings. They wait to feel inspired before they act. They wait to feel confident before they try. They wait to feel ready before they start. And feelings, by their very nature, are unreliable. They shift with your sleep, your mood, the weather, what someone said to you in a meeting. If your entire plan for building a better life depends on feeling like it every day, you have built your future on the least stable ground available. This is the real problem millions of people are quietly wrestling with in this country right now. You see it in the gym memberships that go unused after February. You see it in the side businesses that get started with excitement and abandoned within a month. You see it in the New Year's resolutions that don't survive the first cold, dark week of January. It's not that people don't want change. It's that they were taught somewhere along the way that motivation is supposed to come first. But motivation was never meant to be the engine. It was only ever meant to be the spark. Discipline is the engine. And discipline is unglamorous. It looks like getting up at the same time even when you didn't sleep well. It looks like doing the workout at 70% effort because that's what you have today, instead of skipping it entirely because you can't give 100. It looks like opening the laptop to work on your goal for 20 minutes after a long shift, even though every muscle in your body is asking you to just watch something and go to bed. None of that looks impressive from the outside, but it is, without exaggeration, the entire foundation of every meaningful transformation you have ever witnessed in another human being. Here's something worth sitting with. Every time you tell yourself you're going to do something, and then you do it, you make a small deposit into your own trust account. And every time you tell yourself you're going to do something, and then you don't, you make a withdrawal. Most people are walking around with an emotional bank account that's deeply overdrawn with themselves. They've broken so many private promises. To exercise, to save money, to finally learn that skill, to stop the habit they know isn't serving them, that a part of them has quietly stopped believing their own commitments. And that's a dangerous place to live. Because if you don't trust yourself, no amount of outside encouragement can fully make up for it. The good news is that this account can be rebuilt, not through some massive, dramatic overhaul, but through small, boring, repeated proof. You don't need to prove to yourself that you can run a marathon tomorrow. You need to prove that when you say you'll go for a 15-minute walk, you actually go. You don't need to prove you can build a 6-figure business by next quarter. You need to prove that you'll spend 30 focused minutes on it today, and then do the same thing tomorrow. Self-trust isn't a mindset. It's a track record. And you are building that track record right now, with every choice you make today, whether you're paying attention to it or not. There's a quieter cost to all of this that doesn't get talked about enough. The emotional weight of watching your own potential sit unused. That specific kind of tiredness isn't really about your body. It's about the gap between who you know you could be and who you're currently choosing to be, day after day. It sits in your chest like unfinished business, and it doesn't go away by ignoring it. It only fades when you start closing that gap, one small, honest action at a time. Here's something that might surprise you. The version of yourself that has already built the discipline you're after doesn't need dramatically different circumstances than you have right now. They don't have more hours in the day. They aren't smarter. In most cases, they simply decided on an ordinary day to stop waiting for permission and start collecting small proof. That's it. That's the entire twist most people miss. The transformation was never hiding behind some big future event. It was always available in the next 15 minutes. And what I'm about to share next builds directly on that idea. Because once you understand where discipline actually comes from, you'll never look at motivation the same way again. So if discipline isn't about feeling ready, what is it actually built from? It's built from identity. Not the identity you write in a bio or say out loud to impress someone, but the quiet, private identity you construct through repeated action. Every single time you do something, you're not just completing a task. You're casting a vote for the type of person you believe yourself to be. Skip the workout, and you cast a small vote for I'm someone who doesn't follow through. Show up anyway, even tired, even unmotivated, and you cast a vote for I'm someone who keeps commitments. Over months and years, those votes add up into something real. They become your default. They become, quite literally, who you are. This is why trying to change your entire life overnight almost always fails, and why trying to change one small habit at a time almost always works. Your brain doesn't believe a sudden, dramatic claim. If you've spent 5 years being inconsistent, and you suddenly declare you're a completely disciplined person starting tomorrow, some part of you rightly doubts it. But if you keep one small promise today, and another tomorrow, and another the day after that, your identity shifts quietly and honestly, based on evidence you can actually trust. Let's make this practical, because I promised you real value, not just philosophy. Start with what I call the 1% proof method. Pick one area of your life where you feel the most guilt or the most stuck. Your health, your finances, a skill you've always wanted to build, a relationship you've been neglecting. Now choose the smallest possible version of progress in that area, not the ideal version, the smallest one. If it's fitness, that might be a 10-minute walk. If it's finances, that might be moving $20 into savings today. If it's a skill, that might be 15 minutes of focused practice. The size doesn't matter nearly as much as the consistency. You are not trying to impress anyone with this action. You are trying to prove something to yourself. Do that small action for 7 days in a row before you even think about increasing the difficulty. Most people make the mistake of starting too big, burning out by day 4, and then concluding that they simply don't have discipline. But that's rarely the real problem. The real problem is usually that they set a standard their current trust level couldn't support yet. Build the trust first, with small wins. Then raise the bar. It works in the opposite order of how most people try it. And that's exactly why most people struggle unnecessarily. There's an emotional shift that tends to happen around the 2nd or 3rd week of this practice, and it's worth naming because it can feel confusing if you're not expecting it. You start to feel a strange kind of calm, even before any external results show up. That calm isn't coming from achievement. It's coming from alignment. The simple, underrated relief of no longer being at war with your own word. When your actions start matching what you told yourself you'd do, a certain background anxiety just quietly leaves the room. Many people spend years chasing external success, hoping it will bring them peace, without realizing that a huge portion of that peace was available all along through the much simpler act of becoming someone they can rely on. I also want to address something that trips a lot of people up here in the United States specifically, where we're constantly surrounded by messaging about hustle, grinding, and doing more. That messaging can actually work against real discipline because it frames effort as intensity instead of consistency. You don't need to work 16-hour days to build a strong identity. You need to show up in a smaller, sustainable way for years, not weeks. The tortoise wasn't slow because it lacked ambition. It was steady because steady is what actually finishes the race. Trade the fantasy of the dramatic overnight transformation for the quieter, far more reliable power of showing up again tomorrow. If any of this is landing for you, if you're starting to see your own habits a little differently right now, that shift alone is worth something. And I want to be honest with you about what's coming next, because we're about to get into the part of this video where I explain the real reason most people stay stuck, even when they understand everything I've just told you. It's a root cause almost nobody talks about. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it in your own life. Here's the root cause. Most people don't actually have a discipline problem. They have an identity conflict. Somewhere inside them, there are 2 competing self-images running at the same time. The person they want to become and the person their past experiences convince them they already are. And when those 2 identities disagree, the older one almost always wins because it's had more time to gather evidence. If you grew up hearing that you give up easily, or that you're not the disciplined type, or that people like you don't finish what they start, that story doesn't just disappear because you read an inspiring quote. It has to be outvoted, action by action, over time. This is genuinely important, so let's slow down here. Your past does not get to vote on your future unless you keep handing it the ballot. Every time you catch yourself thinking, I've always been like this, pause and ask a better question. Is that actually true? Or is that just the most repeated story about myself? Stories that get repeated enough start to feel like facts, even when they were never permanent. You are not required to keep being the person your worst years described. You are allowed to gather new evidence, starting today, that quietly outvotes the old story until it no longer holds any real power over your decisions. This is also where the idea of walking alone becomes less intimidating and more like a genuine advantage. When you spend time by yourself, real, unrushed, undistracted time, you get to hear your own thinking without it being drowned out by everyone else's opinions about who you should be. And that matters more than most people realize, because the world is loud with advice. Everyone has an opinion about your career, your relationships, your goals, your pace. Some of that advice is genuinely valuable. A lot of it is just other people projecting their own fears or limitations onto your life. Learning to sit with your own thoughts long enough to tell the difference is one of the most underrated skills a person can develop. I want to give you something practical here, because insight without action is just entertainment. Try this. Once a week, spend 15 minutes completely alone, without your phone, and ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do this week that the old version of me, the stuck version, the excuse-making version, wouldn't have done? What's one small promise I broke to myself, and why? And what's the smallest possible action I can take tomorrow that moves me 1 inch closer to the identity I'm trying to build? Write the answers down. Not to judge yourself, but to gather the kind of honest evidence that actually changes a self-image over time. This single habit, done consistently, will do more for your long-term growth than almost any book, course, or seminar you could buy. If what I've shared with you today has genuinely given you something to work with, a new way of thinking about discipline, identity, or the quiet power of small, consistent action, I want to ask you for something simple. Hit like on this video. And if you know someone in your life who's been stuck in the same pattern, someone who keeps saying, next month I'll start, send this to them. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do for someone isn't cheering them on. It's handing them the one idea that finally makes the difference click into place. Now, here's something I haven't fully unpacked yet, and it might be the single most important shift in how you see your own effort from this point forward. Most people believe that progress they can't see means progress isn't happening. That belief alone quietly convinces more people to quit than almost any external failure ever does. And understanding why that belief is wrong is going to change how you handle the next difficult, quiet, unrewarded. Picture a farmer planting a field in early spring. For weeks, there's nothing to see but bare, undisturbed soil. No sprouts, no color, no visible sign that anything is happening at all. If that farmer judged their progress purely by what was visible above ground, they'd assume the entire planting was a failure and dig everything up in frustration. But underneath that quiet, unchanging surface, something significant is actually happening. Roots are extending. Structure is forming. The plant is doing the invisible, unglamorous work that has to happen before anything can ever grow tall enough to be seen. Your own growth follows the exact same pattern. And this is something almost nobody explains clearly enough. When you start a new discipline, a new habit, a new skill, a new version of how you handle stress or setbacks, there is almost always a period where nothing visible seems to change. You show up, you put in the effort, and the mirror looks the same. The bank account looks the same. The skill still feels clumsy. This is the exact point where most people quit, because they mistake invisible progress for no progress at all. But that stretch of apparent nothing is not evidence of failure. It's usually the exact stage where the real internal structure is being built. I want to share something that surprises a lot of people the first time they really hear it. Results are almost always delayed relative to effort. This creates a strange and unfair feeling gap where you're doing everything right, and the world hasn't caught up yet to reflect that back to you. That gap is where character gets built, because it's the one stretch of the journey where you cannot rely on external validation to keep you moving. You have to keep going based on your own internal commitment alone. And here's the encouraging part. The people who learn to move through that invisible stage without quitting are, without exception, the ones who eventually experience the visible breakthrough. Not because they got lucky, but because they were still standing, still building, when the results finally became visible to everyone else. There's an emotional layer to this worth naming, honestly. That quiet stretch can feel isolating, even a little discouraging, especially if the people around you aren't in a season of building anything themselves. You might feel slightly out of step with friends who aren't chasing anything in particular, content to let each week look like the last one. That's not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's simply the natural byproduct of choosing growth in a world where most people, understandably, choose comfort. You don't need everyone around you to understand what you're building. You only need to keep building it. Let me leave you with a specific, practical reframe you can use the next time you feel discouraged by a lack of visible results. Instead of asking, why isn't this working? Ask, what evidence of effort can I actually point to this week? Not results. Effort. Did you show up on the days you didn't feel like it? Did you keep a promise to yourself when breaking it would have been easier and no one would have known? That evidence is real, even when the external results haven't caught up yet. And tracking it honestly will keep you moving through the exact stretch where most people give up right before things start to shift. There is one more layer to all of this, something that ties everything we've covered together into a single, final idea. And it might be the part of this entire video that stays with you the longest. It has to do with what actually happens on the other side of all this quiet, invisible effort, and why the version of yourself waiting there is worth every uncomfortable step it takes to get to them. Here is the single most important idea I want to leave you with today. You will never feel completely ready. There will never be a moment where all the conditions align perfectly, where you feel fully confident, fully rested, fully certain, and fully supported all at the same time. That moment is a myth that keeps millions of capable people frozen in place, waiting for permission that was never going to arrive from anywhere outside themselves. The people who actually build the life they want are not the ones who felt ready. They're the ones who acted anyway and let the confidence catch up to the action instead of waiting for it to arrive first. Everything we've talked about today comes back to one core truth. Your future isn't created by a single decision made in a dramatic moment. It's created in the accumulation of small, private choices, made when no one was watching and nothing seemed to be happening. The version of you that you're hoping to become, calmer, stronger, more capable, more at peace with yourself, isn't waiting somewhere far away for the right circumstances. That version of you is being built right now, today, in whatever small, honest action you're willing to take in the next 24 hours. I want you to really consider something. Somewhere down the road, you're going to look back at this exact season of your life, and you'll either remember it as the time you kept waiting for the perfect moment that never came, or you'll remember it as the quiet turning point where you finally decided to stop outsourcing your future to circumstances and started building it yourself, one small promise at a time. Nobody else gets to decide which of those two memories you end up having. That choice, like almost everything we've discussed today, belongs entirely to you. My name is Grant Michaels, and if there's one thing I hope you carry with you from this video, it's this. You don't need permission, and you don't need to feel ready. You need one small action today that your future self will be grateful for. Keep one promise. Take one walk. Practice one skill for 15 honest minutes. Put $20 where it needs to go. None of these actions will feel significant in the moment, but strung together over months and years, they become the entire architecture of a life you're actually proud to be living. There will be difficult days ahead. There will be stretches where the progress feels invisible and the motivation feels completely absent. That's not a sign to stop. That's simply the terrain every meaningful transformation passes through. Walk through it anyway, not because success is guaranteed, but because the person you become in the process, steadier, more self-trusting, more capable of handling whatever life brings you, is valuable regardless of how quickly the world notices. You are not waiting for someone else to build your life. You already have everything you need to start today. If this video gave you something real to hold on to, something worth returning to on the days when it's hardest to keep going, I'd genuinely appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. This channel exists for exactly this purpose. To walk alongside you through the quiet, unglamorous, deeply worthwhile process of building yourself into someone you trust. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Now go, keep the promise you've been putting off. I'll see you in the next video.